video, very short, we are going to talk about prepositions. Now, we've encountered prepositions already so far. And prepositions, as you hopefully are somewhat aware of, are words that indicate a relationship between things spatially. In middle school, we talk about them as stuff that a squirrel can do to a log, or a plane can do to a tree. And they are the words like in, on, around, through, stuff like that. And so far, for us in Latin, we have encountered the following words. We've encountered in, per, prope, ad, which of course correspond to into, through, near, to, towards, or at. We've also seen in, sub, and x or a, depending upon whether the next word begins with a consonant or the next word would begin with a vowel. And then I got that backwards actually. So, nevertheless, in Latin, a preposition, just like in English, is going to have an object. We call that the object of the preposition, and thus a prepositional phrase. Now, as is many times the case, I'm going to embed within this video 3 superheroes. And by watching this video, and thus proving that you did by naming those 3 superheroes in a Canvas quiz, you're going to get a free 100. So be on the lookout for that. Now, when I, let's say under, you would say under what? Or I would say towards, you would say towards what? That's the object of the preposition. And so the preposition and its object are going to then make up what we know of as a prepositional phrase. We've seen these again in Latin 1 so far when we saw things like in horto, or in velam, or when we'd have sub arbore. You have the preposition and the object of the preposition for a prepositional phrase. Preposition and object of the preposition for the prepositional phrase. Now, we are now in this chapter, and at this time, going to expand beyond our knowledge of these 5 or 6 prepositions. 7, I suppose, if you were to count the in twice. But it's the same word, just in some instances going to mean into, and other instances in. Now, the preposition object, or object of the preposition, can occur in only one of 2 different cases. That is, you would never, ever see, if we were to, let's say, randomly take the pair that is there, and see pair we lie. It cannot exist in that way. Instead, the object of the preposition can only occur in either the accusative case, which we have learned already, and so now we add another reason why a word can be in the accusative, not only direct object, but object of certain prepositions. And now we learn the new case that can also be expressed as the object of preposition, which is the ablative. And so ablative, object of certain prepositions. You would never have the preposition plus either a genitive or nominative plural, which we lie could alternatively be. Doesn't exist. Secondly, is that each preposition requires its object to be in a specific case. And your first superhero is Black Panther. Black Panther, your first superhero. So as you can see behind me, all of these prepositions that you see in per, prope, ad, which we have seen before, now we're going to add to it circum, around, inter, between, intra, inside. A huge difference between those 2 words. For example, we have a network here at school. And certain aspects of the network I can only access at school. And thus it becomes an intranet. Like my H drive is a part of the intranet. But if I were wanting to go to, let's say, ajc.com and read the newspaper from Atlanta, that would be a network in between networks. And so I'm able to access it into the inter-network, or the internet. That's why it's called that. But, neither here nor there. The word contra, against. Ante, before or in front of. If I say stand before me, it means stand in front of me. Post, after or behind, trans, across, ob and propter on account of, every time these prepositions occur, the object of them must be in the accusative. Now, in general, if the preposition is indicating a motion towards something, like to or towards explicitly, or even trans across, it requires its object to be in the accusative. Now let's be clear about this, and students make this mistake year after year. They say things like, Kirkum is accusative. It is not. Prepositions are not a particular case, but rather they require their objects to be in a particular case. So every single time you see any one of these prepositions, their object must be accusative. So let's go ahead and fill in our accusative forms on the right that we should already know. In the singular, it would be, of course, for the first declension, wilam, riwum, arboreum. In the plural, it would be wilas, rivos, arbores. So with all of these prepositions, let's take, for example, contra. You could have contra wilam, contra rigum, contra arboreum, contra wilas, rivos, and arbores. But you could not have contra and the form be in the ablative, because they require it. Now at the bottom, and I'll move it slightly so that you can see, these prepositions, of which we have seen in sub and ex, those prepositions, now including of or a, which means away from, or by, not by as in stand by me, but when I say dinner was burned last night, ab, or mihi, or not mihi, may, by me. De, down from, about or concerning. Sine, without. Cum, with. Pro, for or on behalf of. These prepositions all require their objects to be in the ablative. And in general, if the preposition is indicating a stationary location, place at which, or motion away, then it would require its objects to be in the ablative case. And thus we can then go and put our ablative forms on the right-hand side as well. And here we see wila as an ablative, rivo as an ablative, arbore. And that explains when we saw in chapter 1, sub, meaning under, it had to be sub arbore. It would not be sub arborem. And then for the plurality, wheelies, riwis, arboris. Chapter 2, when we saw ex agris, second declension ablative plural, that's why it was agris, and you will never ever see ex agros, because ex requires its objects to be in the ablative case, whereas the ones in blue that you see there require their objects to be in the accusative case. Now hopefully you notice that as we have it up here, there's one word that appears in both. And there are actually a couple of others that can do so as well, but this is the most common. And that would be here, the word in and the word in. The difference is that when in is followed by a word that is accusative, it is going to mean into. In plus accusative, into. Your second superhero is the Flash. Make sure you write down the Flash. Whereas if it's in plus a word in the ablative, it is merely going to mean in or on, as opposed to into or onto. We have seen this before in the examples of in wilam, in plus accusative, into the country house, versus in wilam, in the country house, or on the country house, I suppose. Now, what you're going to have to memorize is the following. And in class, Mr. Buttram is going to help all of you walk through the examples that are down here at the bottom. But you're first and foremost going to have to memorize the prepositions themselves. If I say around, you must know that means kirkum. Where is it at? Oh, there it is. If I say concerning, you're going to have to know that's day. If I were to say out of, you're going to have to know that's X or A. Again, X, next word begins with a vowel. A, the next word begins with a consonant, like our an and a. And the same thing with ob and ah. Ob, next word begins with vowel. Ah, next word begins with a consonant. So one, you got to know the prepositions themselves. Two, you're going to have to know which case they require. So if I were to tell you the word sine, or without, you have to know that sine requires an ablative, and then you're going to have to know the accusative forms for the three declensions and the ablative forms for the three declensions. So when you practice, so that you can take your quizzes, plural, over prepositions, I'm going to give you the English expressions, the prepositional phrases, and you're going to have to render them into Latin. So to just do one of them randomly, let's go with between the streams. First and foremost, I got to know what the word between is. And that is the word inter. Then I have to know what inter requires its objects to be in. I wrote it in blue. It is required to have its objects in the accusative. Then I go to the word for stream, which is rebus. And I need to put it in the accusative plural, which in this instance would be, as I look over there, making sure I got it right. And those two then are the equivalency. And that's what you're going to have to be able to do in your practice and in the quizzes themselves. So hopefully you understand a little bit about the prepositions and prepositional phrases. And Wonder Woman is your last and final superhero. Good luck. Bye.